Milestone Synergy Auto-Embedding takes the embedding step that is typically done by a tech at an embedding center and transitions that work to the grossing staff. I have my pre-grossed specimens here. I have my Synergy molds that come in a kit along with pre-cut sponges for these molds. I'm keeping my sponges in formalin to keep them saturated and help the tissue not dry out. With these Synergy molds, I take my specimen and just like at embedding, I want to make sure that whichever side I want oriented on the face of my block is going to be face down into my mold. Now I'm going to take one of my saturated sponges and I'm going to place it on top of the tissue. I want to make sure my tissue is not too close or right on the edges. Then the sponge is used to keep the tissue in place. So I take my cassette that would be pre-printed with my session number. I place it on top, making sure it's snapped in securely and snug. And now my tissue and cassette are ready to go into my Synergy rack. The Synergy auto-embedding system is an excellent thing to help with staffing shortages. On average, it takes a technician roughly an hour to do 45 to 50 cassettes on an embedding center. So by transferring this work to the grossing staff, each rack would alleviate an hour of tech time. This is our Synergy rack. It has a 45 cassette capacity. We can take this mold and cassette and tissue and insert it into our rack. Now that I have my gross tissue in my Synergy rack, you can see that the cassettes are flat. Once I insert it into my Magnus tissue processor, it will be lowered into the cavity, and these arms will then be lifted up, which in turn slants the cassette to allow for reagents and wax to easily flow in and out of those for your processing. So now my tissue is starting to process. Once it is done processing with the reagents and comes out of wax infiltration, it will be already embedded and ready for microtomy. We can now take our rack off, bring it to our cold module, carefully remove them from the Synergy rack, making sure to keep that wax in the cassette. Place them on our cold embedding module. Now that they're on the cold embedding module, they will freeze. Once they freeze, we can remove them from the cold module, and then we can separate them from the mold, and they are ready for microtomy.